Anun Unrama, also known as Hellboy, also known simply as Red, was the child of a demonic father and a human witch mother. Destined to bring about the apocalypse and the end of the world, the young demon child was summoned by Nazi forces during the Second World War. However, before he could fall into the wrong hands and be brought to realize his destiny, he was rescued by Allied forces who adopted the demonic baby. Raised in secrecy by his adoptive father, Professor Broom, in a hidden government facility, the young demon grew up to become a member of the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, also known as the BPRD. Though he proved to be their most effective agent, Hellboy was always uncomfortable with his heritage, which was further stimulated by society outcasting him, looking upon him as a monster. Despite this, Hellboy rebelled against his intended destiny and heroically saved the world from paranormal forces on several occasions, whilst also learning to come to terms with the loss of his father and learning to accept his heritage. After several acts of heroism, Red eventually retired from his position and went on to live a peaceful life among friends and raise a family with the woman he loved. Demon in appearance, human in personality, Hellboy proved that we choose our destiny for ourselves. Eric Brooks was born into a strange world, living as a mirror image of both man and monster. Whilst Eric's mother was still pregnant, she was bitten by a vampire. As a result, the virus was passed on to the unborn child. The unusual circumstances of his birth resulted in Eric becoming a hybrid of human and vampire. In consequence, he was granted all the strengths that vampires boasted, whilst also possessing immunity to all of their weaknesses, except for their inherent thirst for blood. Fortunately for both himself and humanity, Brooks was discovered by a man named Abraham Whistler, a long-term vampire hunter. Whistler adopted the young boy and trained him to become the ultimate vampire hunter, whilst he provided the young man with a serum that helped keep the bloodthirst at bay. Once fully grown, Eric took up the name Blade and spread fear throughout the vampire underworld. Though they had woven themselves into every part of human society, Blade continuously dismantled their underground operations. Despite having to endure the loss of his adoptive father twice, Blade defeated the most dangerous of vampires across the globe, battling their gods, their demons, and even Count Dracula himself. After preventing the extermination of the human race, Blade honoured Abraham Whistler's memory by continuing his work. Though born as a being with the potential to be an unstoppable monster, Blade managed to turn his darkest trait into his strongest asset, and prove that anyone can overcome their inner evil. Well, it's been a while since I've done a Halloween special, hasn't it? So today I'll be bringing you Hellboy vs Blade. As you may or may not have guessed from the intros, we'll be covering the movie versions of these characters, as portrayed by Ron Perlman and Wesley Snipes respectively. I won't be acknowledging the Hellboy reboot as it falls within its own continuity. Any depictions of these characters from their comic book appearances are for the sake of reference. As always, any images or footage of these characters from other source material is for visual flair only. Now let's get on with this year's Halloween special.
Round 1.
Thanks to his demonic physiology, Hellboy possessed significantly superior physicality to humans. Sporting incredible degrees of superhuman strength, Hellboy could send opponents flying through the air with the power of his punches alone, and even cause significant damage to the most durable of weapons and materials. This in turn also allowed him to pick up immensely heavy objects of incredible size with ease, granting him the ability to proficiently wield them as weapons. Despite his large stature and bulk, he could also make use of enhanced speed and reflexes, as he has demonstrated on several occasions, capable of dodging and defending against several attacks at once, even while intoxicated. His unique physiology also granted him increased stamina and endurance, allowing him to partake in several lengthy battles with no sign of tiring. In addition, he was bestowed with astonishing levels of durability. In several instances, Hellboy has withstood attacks from opponents sporting comparable power to his own and persevered. He has also withstood falls from several stories, along with close-range explosions, and has shrugged off many wounds that would kill an ordinary human, as well as recovering from such damage at a quicker rate than any human could boast. He also possessed an immunity to fire, as well as enhanced sight and other senses, granting him a greater level of awareness than the typical human. Lastly, Hellboy's right hand, known as the right hand of doom, was grafted onto his body before he entered the human world. This powerful creation granted Hellboy even greater levels of physical strength, and its unique stone-like structure made it almost indestructible, allowing Red to make use of it for both offense and defense. Fitting of his demonic heritage, Hellboy is a force to be reckoned with on the merits of his physicality alone. As a hybrid between man and vampire, Blade sported a unique physiology that awarded him with several advantages in combat. Virtually all of his physical assets were superhuman, which he enhanced further through his rigorous training. Blade's strength allowed him to throw a full-grown woman across a rooftop with no sign of strain. He was also able to incapacitate and even kill several varieties of enemies with the power of his attacks alone. Blade's speed was even more devastating, often moving too fast for the opponent to react. Blade could expertly defend himself from several attacks at once, whilst also dishing out just as many of his own. He could sustain this level of devastation for several minutes at once, never slowing his assault or showing signs of fatigue. Thanks to his vampiric nature, Blade was also disturbingly resilient. In several instances, Blade has withstood attacks from superhuman opponents of even greater strength. He almost always went on to immediately continue the fight. Not only did he possess incredible tolerance to pain, but he was also awarded with a healing factor. As explained by Whistler, vampires have the natural ability to regenerate, and as seen in the movies, this even extends to the loss of limbs.
We hunt them, you see. Moving from one city to the next, tracking their migrations. They're hard to kill. They tend to regenerate.
However, in order for Blade or any vampire to take full advantage of this ability, they must drink blood to increase its effects, as was shown within the second Blade movie. After being captured, Blade sustained several puncture wounds and had the vast majority of his blood drained, and yet after spending less than 10 seconds in a pool of blood, he was fully healed and battle ready. Even without feeding on blood, Blade's healing factor allowed him to heal from the most serious of injuries within the space of a day, and as a result he possessed incredible pain tolerance, and could continue fighting even after sustaining massive amounts of damage, though a stab through the heart or a decapitation would still end his life. Lastly, Blade's senses were extremely acute, granting him the ability to detect enemies from very far away, or even in almost total darkness, whether it be by sense of smell or sight. Overall, Blade's vampire nature granted him with incredible physical abilities that can instill fear even amongst the highest ranks of the vampires. While both of these characters are very similar when it comes to the basis of their physicality, they also possess their own distinct advantages. I feel that Hellboy's greatest asset here will be his strength, in contrast to Blade's speed. While I do believe that Hellboy has made better use of his power, Blade has shown that he can stand up to such might on several instances, and the same goes for Hellboy being able to defend himself against opponents that possess speed of a similar caliber to Blade. The question of resilience is also tricky. While Hellboy's ability to recover from serious injury might not be as flushed out as Blade's, he appears to be more unfazed by serious damage, suggesting to me that he may possess a greater level of durability. However, Blade's healing factor is something that I feel counterbalances this, as it appears to contribute more consistently to Blade's perseverance, in comparison to Red's increased ability to recover from injury, even without the consumption of blood on Blade's part. As such, this leaves us with an impasse, as in combat, both characters rely on the advantages that I have already made note of when it comes to their fighting styles. As a result, no advantage will be awarded for physicality.
Round 2.
As the BPRD's most effective agent, Hellboy honed himself into an impressive combatant. Thanks to his many years of fighting many forms of unusual opponents, Hellboy is a highly skilled hand-to-hand combatant. Although I couldn't find any source providing information on what martial arts he may use, we can see from his fights across the movies that he is very much a brawler. Although this method of fighting may be considered basic to some, Hellboy has shown on several occasions that he is able to apply this fighting style with excellent precision and efficiency, all the while maintaining good bodily coordination and footwork. When using this style in tandem with his strength, Hellboy could overpower the vast majority of opponents he encountered, and those he couldn't overpower, he could beat into submission. In addition, Hellboy was also a proficient marksman. Although he is claimed to not be the best shot, he has shown a capacity for effective accuracy when wielding firearms, able to hit small targets at mid-distances. In keeping with his preference for mixing things up, Red was also fond of using his environment to his advantage, having displayed an aptitude for improvised weaponry. All this experience has led Hellboy to becoming a simple but highly effective combatant. He's proven his effectiveness firsthand in both of his battles with Prince Nuada. Despite being heavily drunk in their first fight, Hellboy was not immediately defeated, and was able to defend himself appropriately for the vast majority of the encounter, only losing once he had become distracted. In their second encounter, Hellboy managed to eventually score the victory, even showing remarkable talent for swordsmanship, effectively wielding such a weapon in tandem with the benefits of his stone fist. All in all, Hellboy is an impressive fighter, one who has faced many powerful and dangerous enemies and lived to tell the tale. Blade is a master of combat. In both the comics and the movies, he makes use of several different martial arts, such as Corporea, Hapkido, Jiu-Jitsu, Kung Fu, Ninjutsu, Shotokan Karate, Jeet Kune Do, boxing, and improvised street fighting. Although I just listed the styles that have been attributed to him in the comics, his fighting style in the movies is very similar. Plus, in an interview, Wesley Snipes himself has confirmed the use of Shaolin Kung Fu and Jiu-Jitsu. In addition, the YouTuber known as Godzilla Rex, whom I will provide a link to, is highly knowledgeable in several martial arts, and was able to pinpoint several of the styles that Blade uses in the movies, many of which match his comic counterpart. All of these styles grant Blade a high level of versatility and adaptability in battle. He's proven this effectiveness on several occasions, dispatching multiple opponents with seemingly no effort, melding several different techniques mixed into one consistent and fluid movement. This is further reinforced by the fact that Blade fights mathematically and tries to end his fights as quickly as possible, something of which Snipes has also stated in an interview. In addition, Blade is also highly skilled in the use of stealth, and can easily get the drop on unsuspecting opponents, even those with enhanced senses, such as vampires. Also, Blade is a remarkable user of melee weapons, demonstrating excellent use of various bladed and thrown weapons, along with a masterful use of swordsmanship. This also extends to Blade's knowledge of improvised weaponry, and he has shown that he can effectively use non-lethal objects for combative purposes. Lastly, Blade is a highly skilled marksman, capable of gunning down several enemies at once in single shots, which he enhances even further with his superhuman reflexes, as well as occasionally incorporating their use into his martial arts styles. Overall, Blade is a highly dangerous opponent. Anyone who challenges him will have a difficult time matching his unpredictability and versatility, and he will be able to keep virtually anyone on their toes. A battle between these two would be a spectacular showcase of skill, and both opponents provide their own unique approach to combat that will surely grant one another a challenge. However, while Hellboy has proven himself as an excellent hand-to-hand combatant, Blade takes it a step further through his intense refinement and tactical prowess. Every bit of ingenuity that Hellboy has displayed is matched by Blade's own adaptability to improvise and adapt. His aptitude for mathematically taking out his opponents also grants him more options in battle. However, I will acknowledge the effectiveness of Hellboy's approach to combat, as he has proven that he is still a highly dangerous opponent to face, even for enemies that make use of similar fighting styles to Blade. Despite this, Blade's superior tactical prowess and refinement award him the advantage for combative skills.
Round 3.
Hellboy's choice in weaponry is something that I feel is reflected in his fighting style, favouring heavy firepower over subtlety. Hellboy carried an oversized revolver called the Samaritan. While he has used other firearms, their use was typically situational, and not something he kept on his person. His unique weapon only housed 4 rounds, but each packed a hell of a punch. Each round could blow apart large sections of stone structures and cause significant damage to a wide variety of materials. Hellboy also carried several different varieties of ammunition for his weapon, specialised for dealing with supernatural threats. He made use of a speed reloader, allowing him to reload all 4 rounds in one swift motion, granting him a faster reload speed. He also carried several mystical and holy trinkets, should he need their use against any particular unholy foe. What Hellboy's loadout lacks in versatility, it makes up for in brute force, a mirror image of his power in combat. Blade is a walking armory. Although many of his weapons were laced with silver and garlic for the purpose of killing vampires, they could be used effectively on standard targets. Blade's most infamous weapon would have to be his sword. Although standard in appearance, the hilt housed 4 hidden spring-activated blades, which would immediately dismember the hand of anyone trying to pick up the weapon, preventing anyone other than Blade from using it. Blade made use of several small-edged weapons, such as throwing discs and kunai knives, and even multiple stakes that he kept strapped to his leg. Adding to his lethality, he occasionally employed the use of a whip knife, allowing him to kill his targets at a mid-distance, without having to engage them in hand-to-hand combat. Blade could also make use of a silver wire that he could wrap around an enemy's neck, choking them out, or even severing their heads completely. Although proficient in the use of many firearms, Blade had a preference for handguns. Wielding such compact weaponry allowed him to maintain a fast-paced assault on his enemies, as well as making them more easy to conceal. He kept several vials on his person, which were housed in an injector gauntlet which he strapped on his wrist. Although this was primarily meant for killing vampires, it could still cause severe bleeding damage against other opponents. And finally, Blade wore a Kevlar vest, bolstering his durability and protecting him from gunfire. Ultimately, Blade is geared and prepared for almost any situation, and the variety of weaponry he can pull from will off-throw anyone. This section is probably the easiest. While I acknowledge that Hellboy's revolver possesses more firepower than Blade's typical sidearms, that's where the demon's advantages end. Blade possesses much more variety, and has far more options that he can pull from. As a result, Blade's variety awards him the advantage in weaponry.
Final round.
Both Hellboy and Blade were born with the natural purpose of growing up to become monsters. Yet they both chose to deny their natural darkness, and instead chose to use their gifts in service of fighting the monsters that they related to. A fight between these two would be a spectacular demonstration of grit, determination, and fortitude. While only one may be victorious, both are equal as a threat to the other. With that said, the final tally for this fight is a minor 6 out of 10 majority. Given how both combatants appeared to prefer dealing with lone opponents with melee-focused combat, I feel that this is how the conflict would begin. As Blade draws his sword, Hellboy flexes his stone fist, and within seconds, both relentlessly charge into battle. They would clash, demonstrating remarkable furiosity and skill. While the initial conflict would look fairly even, both would be caught off guard by the other's unique advantages. Hellboy would be forced to endure more glancing blows from Blade's fast-paced assault, while the Daywalker would be forced to bear the brunt of Red's strength. After going back and forth for several minutes, Hellboy manages to parry a downward strike from Blade's sword, catching the blade in the grip of his stone fist, and immediately following up with a crunching uppercut that sends Blade sailing back into the stone wall behind him. As Blade brings himself to his feet, the hidden blades spring open in the sword's hilt. Still holding the weapon by its blade, Hellboy simply makes a snarky comment on how he could have been caught off guard.
Jumpy, slippery bastard.
In response, Blade almost instantaneously draws his firearm and begins sending several rounds hurling down range at his foe, while simultaneously hurling multiple bladed discs at the demon. Forced to evade, Hellboy returns the favour, but as he expends the Samaritan's ammo capacity, Blade is rapidly and acrobatically making his way forward, scoring more glancing blows against his target. Upon closing the distance, Blade draws his knives and lunges forward with a rapid offensive, while Hellboy retaliates using the sword and his club-like fist in a mixture of offense and defense. Both would now pour every ounce of energy and furiosity into their efforts. Then, in a split second, Blade employs a roundhouse kick, knocking the sword from Hellboy's grip, but the demon rolls with a hit and grabs Blade's hand, negating his attempted follow-up stab, clenching his stone fist and crushing Blade's hand beneath his stone grip. As Blade winces in pain, he responds with a headbutt, smashing Red's nose in. Within the split second of his enemy being stunned, the Daywalker draws on all his fury, and instantly deploys and empties his injector gauntlets into Hellboy's neck and chest, while gritting his teeth from trying to ignore the pain of punching with a broken hand. As the demon writhes in agony, Blade reclaims his sword, and thrusts it through his enemy's throat, and subsequently and viciously circles it around Hellboy's neck, decapitating him. Tested by his most worthy adversary yet, Blade the Daywalker is declared the victor. Alright ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this year's Halloween special. I know it wasn't as horror themed or as scary as my last Halloween video, but I've wanted to do this video for quite a while, so I hope it paid off. As always, thank you very much for watching. Be sure to follow me on Twitter to stay up to date, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Happy Halloween!